Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. Homework, right? Homework for tomorrow is we are going to continue with study guide 9. We're going to focus on the 4 artworks. So number 11, going once again to prehistory. It's grouped here because of location. 219, 220, and 223. That will end all of the artworks that will be covered on that first test. So our first quiz, I should say, is prehistory Pacific together on 9-9. Okay, so we're going to move that. Okay. I really want to close that door, but, oh, sorry, hit the wrong one. Come on. So if you remember, the theme that we were looking at with Micronesia is we're looking at the connections between the cultures and their natural world. And that takes us to a navigation chart. Now, this navigation chart, which number is it? Which number is it? Find it. Let me know. 221. Yep. I don't know if I would call it art. I'm recording this and other people in other places can hear me, but I don't know if it's art. I think it's really cool, but I don't know if it's really art. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to watch this video right here, and I'm going to pause the presentation again on Zoom. So if you're at home, make sure to click this link on the page of the presentation to watch it, because I probably don't have copyright issues of this. Okay. Okay, so we're going to go back to our video. So we just watched this video, Central. It's a really short one. We'll go over the information, but you're welcome to hit this link at home if you want to look at it. On the video, they called it a stick chart. In AP, they call it a navigation chart, which tells you the function, doesn't it? Right? So the function of this is it is a navigation chart. Okay. So it's from the Marshall Islands, like the example we saw in the video. And this is a later piece from the 19th and 20th century. Okay. I'm not going to dwell on this. It's all in your note takers, so you have a chance to write that down later. Okay. So you can see that they come in all shapes and sizes, right? They come in all shapes and sizes. And if you see that video, you can see them actually holding them to kind of get a scale. It's really something that you're able to hold. They're normally about 12 inches in size, right, at their shortest diameter or distance. Okay, so thinking about the form, right, what do the lines represent? What did the video say the lines represented? What do the lines represent? Exactly. So they represent your wave patterns. So the lines represent the wave patterns and the swells. So those are the currents. So if you're navigating by boat, and you probably have all seen boats, right? You saw Mohana, right? You saw other images of Polynesia boats before, like, or you've been to Hawaii or Tahiti and you've been able to experience some of those. Their boats were sometimes big, but most of the time they were quite small. And so if you had a one-person, two people boat, you would have to be able to understand where the current is strong, where you're going to have swells, in order to be able to get, from point A to point B. It's kind of difficult. Has anyone ever kayaked in an ocean? I have. Anyone? It's kind of hard sometimes. A bay is easy, right? Because it's like flat for the most of the time and very little current. But if you have to go over a wave, right, it sometimes can be a challenge. So you really have to navigate precisely to be able to get through it. Okay. What do the shells represent? They didn't talk about that in the video, but what do you think the shells represent? Yeah. Islands. Islands, very good. So those represent the islands. So this is, it's in art history, but I was mentioning at the beginning, this really is a utilitarian thing, right? This is a map, right? It's a navigation chart. And so it's going to really help you, right, be able to, right, be able to navigate and to teach people how to navigate. That was an element of the video, right? They talked about how these were teaching tools, and that's probably good to know. These are made from natural materials, right? They're made from wood fibers from the island, the shells from the ocean. They're woven together with natural fibers. It does float, but more than likely, they probably didn't take these out on the boat. They probably memorized these things, right? They memorized them, and they were able to use them to teach them to other sailors, other people, younger generations, right? But it does float, okay? That's all it is. There's nothing else to say, okay? Smart History might have some more info too, okay? The next place we have in Micronesia is kind of complex. It's one of those places that's very mysterious and we don't know a lot about it. You have two images of non-Madol. And once you guys are flipping through the pages, I did this for all the past ones and I forgot to look to the future ones. Let's go ahead and add the number to this too. So what's the number for this one? 213. Does that sound about right? Because you said it with a question mark, so I just want to make sure. 213? Okay. So non-Madol, let me get rid of that pad, that thing. There's two images of it. Now, in most of art history, when I get the 250 and I have multiple photos of a location with buildings and architecture, it normally says, oh, this is the Parthenon and this is the Erechtheion. Like it will tell me specifically the building. This one does not. So I have a feeling that these are really just kind of like contextual images to help you get a basic understanding of the system that we're in, right? So let me close this here. Okay, so these are contextual images. You can see that they're along water. You see they're next to a big body of water. And so we'll see aerial imagery of that so that you can understand that a little bit more. Okay, so we're in Pohnpei, not Pohnpei, but Pohnpei in Micronesia. And so you can see that it's right next to those Marshall Islands that we were just at. And so I'm not going to watch this video because I think I found a better video, but this is very mysterious. This video that I've attached here, you're welcome to look at. It's almost like the same imagery over and over again. You can take a tour here, and that's what it is. It's a promotional tour video, not very good. And basically, it's kind of like being in Pohnpei, right? The other place, not Pohnpei, it's kind of like Venice. I'm sorry, not Pohnpei. It's kind of like Venice in a way. It is on a waterway, and you're basically in speedboats and other kinds of kayaks and stuff. And you're like looking around, and it's all these very mysterious buildings that we don't really know a lot about. So that's really what it's like. But we're going to look at the ruins and look at the building materials in our discussion. Okay, so this is the abandoned capital of non-Madol. So it was abandoned. It was like in the height of its power, it was around for about 500 years, right? So it dates a little bit earlier. It dates to 700, but at the height of its power, it was a little bit later. It was extremely powerful and prosperous. There was a series of leaders who were able to pool resources to have this complex built, right? It's not a city. It is a capital that has religious and like governmental buildings in it, but most people lived on the outskirts. So really the people who lived here were people who worked within its walls, okay? worked within its buildings, worked within its borders. So it's a ceremonial, religious site, and a governmental site. Okay. I do have a video here, which I just got. It. So we're going to look at it just a little bit. And the reason we're going to have us look at it is because it gives us an idea of what it looked like back in the day. We'll see photos of what it looks like today, but this will give you a little context of what it looks like. I don't think you need to worry. Like there's a bunch of captions on these videos. I don't think you have to memorize them or jot them down. Obviously, if something stands out to you, feel free to go ahead. So if you're watching this at home, you can watch this link here by clicking video. Okay, so as you saw in the video, you got an idea of what it looked like, right, when they built it. And then basically they had accumulated all this wealth, and they were able to bring people from other lands and other territories in to construct this megalithic, I shouldn't say megalithic, but this city, right, this capital, using heavy materials, just like Stonehenge, right? We talked about that before. They lasted for about 500 years. And at the end, basically, they ended because they had a series of revolts. The people from other lands revolted against them, and then they had coups, and eventually the kings lost their power. I want to say, like, in the last 100 years of them, the leaders basically became corrupt. We talked about yesterday how important community is. And so instead of giving to the people, they were selfish, and they were just like accumulating their own wealth and letting people be poor and hungry. And so then they were overturned, right? So it is a series of 100 artificial rectilinear inlets, right? So on the water, they built like 100 different structures that go over 200 acres. It housed about 1,000 people, but in the entire community, the whole entire territory, there are about 25,000 people. So the 1,000 people is probably the most important, knowing that people who work within that district are the ones who live there. Okay. Questions on any of that? Oh my goodness, sorry. Okay, so here's an aerial map. This comes from our textbook. So you can see the entire territory of the city. You can see that parts of it is built on the land. That's from the video when they talked about the island of Temwen. And then here you can see how they built into the water. And so, like I said, they built this complex on the coral reefs, right? And so that's important to know that they use the natural environment, right? They use the natural environment. And so why would you build on water and not land? If this is a ceremonial and capital, like for like politics, could there be anything symbolic about the water? Isn't the water everything to the people of the Pacific, right? They fish in it, they navigate by it, right? Gods sometimes live in it, right? They also live in volcanoes and other things like that. But it would be, there was an intentional reason why they were building in the water, right? And so here's some more examples of it. They use large bauxite blocks. We'll be able to see that in some of the close-up photos. Some of them weighed 50 tons. So they were moving all of that large bauxite to create these artificial structures on the water. So they had to get it through the water to get it on those artificial, on the coral reefs to create the islands, right? And you can see that it's organized. It's organized into districts based on religion and government. So this is a recreation video you can hit that basically turns this into that final image off the video that I showed you of what it looks like back in the day. Okay, so how were they made? We really don't know. We have no clue how they lifted it. We have no clue how they move things. We really don't know. That kind of information got lost. Okay, so sadly, I don't have very much to tell you about that. We just know that they were super heavy. But looking at them up close, we can see that they just didn't arbitrarily stack them, right? We do have an oral tradition that tells us, though, a very fantastic story about how this site was built. I don't think you need to worry about memorizing it, but they say great birds or giants moved those rocks, right? So you can kind of get an idea of that. We also think that these twin sorcerers, which are kind of those early leaders, those early brothers, right, created this place of worship. That's all passed down through oral tradition. So you could, in context, talk about how there was an oral tradition and that this is a sacred spot based on these stories. Another part is that the series of canals were cut. So one of the reasons why there's water in between the different buildings is that they would use it for eels to enter and in and out of the city. So eels could have been some sort of sacred animal or totem animal or ancestral animal, right? Turtles are real common too. So this idea that the animals were allowed to come in and out. Water is also good for just keeping cities clean, right? Because it moves garbage in and out, brings in fresh water, kicks out dirty water, that sort of thing. So we actually have turtle remains, so they could have sacrificed turtles as well. We pretty much talked about this already. This is there is a governmental section and a spiritual section. And so the spiritual section was in this part that I circled here. You can see based on some of the architecture that we saw from other sites that there was like this temple with that high peaked roof that would have sat there, and it would have been used in obviously religious ceremonies. Priests would have been there daily, and so on. And so all of this religious part would protect people from the elements, protect people from the natural world, right? So it talks here about surging tides, monsoons, hurricanes, I think is the same thing as a monsoon, right? All right, I think so. Okay. So this is just a computer generated close-up of what I just showed. Right, so here is a detail different than our image set. How is the bowl site configured? How would you describe how they arrange those long columns of ball sites? Oh shoot, I just gave you one word.
I feel like it's kind of like a log cabin where they stack them. Like having kind of like, I don't know how to say, but like perpendicular to each other.
Right, there's these long columns of ball site, and they do look like they're stacked like Lincoln logs and log cabins, right? But also you can see that they inserted smaller stones kind of in between, so like maybe in the gaps, right? And then just once again, thinking about that these were made, you know, under the liege of a ruler, how is power communicated through the construction? Anyone? Can I get anyone else to help? Besides Evelyn? Who wants to help? How is power, talk to amongst yourself. How is power conveyed? It could be something we talked about already. Okay, how's power conveyed? How's power conveyed? Nicole, can you help me? Right, so there had to be powerful leaders that could get that heavy equipment moved in and organized. Anything about it visually? What's a visual thing that you can see that conveys power? Yeah.
It's kind of like very put together. It's like this very like clean stone building. So you can tell that somebody really thought it out and had people work like very precisely
right? So it was technically done. Isn't that kind of intimidating in a way? It's tall, it's like heavy, it's constructed well. We even saw photos of that fortification, right? Now I should put the contextual images. These are the ones that they included. So you could talk about that rock configuration there. You could talk about power. I just want to make sure that you guys understand that I think this one is to help you remember that it's on the water, that there was canals to get in between the different buildings. Okay. Now this one is probably more like they also did build in the land next to the water to help you remember that they're not all on the island, that some of it is on the mainland. I honestly think that's why there's those two photos. Okay. Okay. I think we have time for one more. Let me look here. At the time. Let's see what's next. Yeah, let's try one more. Let's look at images of power in Polynesia. This is probably the region that you're most familiar with. We're gonna not look up, but we're gonna talk about two vocabulary terms that you should know. Yeah, Easter Island is a good one to go to for this. For 214, look at it, I put the number there. Wow, go for that, right? Mana, right? We're gonna talk about a mana again when we talk about Hawaii, right? And we look at the Hawaiian image. Mana is a supernatural power. So mana is a supernatural power. It's often linked to your genealogy, your fertility, and then other protocols, right? That's a very fancy definition, right? So basically, it's the ways you have a supernatural power, right? Now, it's important to know that the mana is something that is in something, right? Mana is within me. It is my power to be able to accomplish what I want to, right? It's within something. Tapu is another concept, excuse me, and your mana is protected by a set of rules governing actions and rituals, and that's the tapu. So tapu is basically what you do, what you sing. It's the things you do to protect the mana, to protect your power, to protect your essence. Does that make sense? Right? So those are two important things to know when we look at Polynesian art, because we'll see it at Easter Island, we'll see it in Hawaii, we'll see it in our staff god from the Rotundas. Okay, we'll stop there. And we'll pick up with this tomorrow. Remember, once again, quiz is not Friday. We're going to take it next Thursday. And then what we'll do is we will do a little bit of review, and then we'll jump into the next section next week. And then we'll just go back to taking the quiz when we have another really good day to be able to do it.